Welcome, League members and guests. I'm Bonnie McNeil, Voter Services Chair for League of Women Voters, Deerfield area. I am happy to welcome you to the candidate forum for 3 important races within Lake County, Illinois: the Lake County Circuit Court Clerk, the Lake County Coroner, and the Lake County State's Attorney. Our program is being held through the Zoom platform and will be recorded and published as soon as possible. League of Women Voters is a 100-year-old organization that is proudly nonpartisan. We encourage informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, influence public policy through education and advocacy. We stand firm in our commitment to empower voters and defend democracy. Our commitment to these principles is honored through the sponsorship of such programs as this forum, the creation of the Illinois Voters Guide, a nonpartisan compilation of candidates in all Illinois races, and in our support for voter registration and education programs throughout the year. Today's forum is sponsored by Leagues of Women Voters of Deerfield area, Highland Park-Highwood, Lake County, Lake Forest Lake Bluff, and Northwest Lake County. I would now like to introduce our moderator, Erin Roper, who will explain the guidelines for today's forum and introduce the candidates. It should be noted that under League rules, the moderator does not reside within the election district of the candidates participating in the forum. Erin is the past president of the Homewood-Flosswood Area League of Women Voters. Also, from 2013 through 2019, she was a member of the League of Women Voters Illinois State Board. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. I'd just like to quickly go over a few of the rules that all the candidates have agreed to. With regard to the forum itself, each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes to give opening remarks, and then the questions will be 90-second answers each. And at the end of the questioning period, each candidate will also have a closing statement, which is limited to 90 seconds. We also need for everyone to understand that the League of Women Voters reserves the right to publicize the forum and invite the media of other entities not associated with any candidates or campaign to provide televised radio or other coverage of the forum. The League of Women Voters claims copyright ownership of any recording or transcripts produced, and perhaps most importantly, candidates and their designees may not use any portion of the recorded forum, including audio clips, video clips, or partial transcripts of the forum in campaign advertisements or other material for partisan political purpose. So, with those opening comments completed, I'd like to welcome the candidate, one of the 2 candidates for the Lake County Circuit Court Clerk, Erin Cartwright-Weinstein. She will be making a 2-minute statement since her opponent has declined participation in this event. Erin, welcome. And
thank you.
We'd like to hear for your 2-minute introduction.
Thank you very much. My name is Erin Cartwright-Weinstein. I'm your Lake County Circuit Court Clerk. I practiced law in Lake County for 17 years before I was elected to this position in 2016. The Circuit Clerk's office is the record keeper for the court system. We are the gateway between the public and attorneys and the courts. We have 5 courthouses and 138 employees. My first term started with an archaic record-keeping system, paper court files, excessive spending by my predecessor, leaving me with low bank balances, and too many inefficiencies. So I started to make my changes. First was the electronic filing system for documents. Then we went into a contract for a new case management system, which is going to save us $2 million per year once it is implemented within the next year. It will provide online access to case information, documents, allow for payments online, and the ability to plead guilty to traffic tickets online in lieu of court. We also have a document digitization project. This will allow us to go completely e-record. We'll be saving the forests and saving taxpayer dollars. We've improved public outreach and we've been building relationships with civic organizations. We provide trainings and presentations to the public, attorneys, and students. We do expungement summits for people who are eligible to attempt to remove convictions from their records so that they can obtain employment and become more active members of society. We have an amnesty week where we waive interest and collection fees for people to request the return of their driver's license, etc. We have Facebook and Twitter. I also finalized the Circuit Clerk's Office first union contract, providing my staff with living wages, and we are working on building employee morale. I've testified before the State House for legislation to allow for auditing of elected office holders' financials, and I've also been selected to serve on the boards of the Illinois Association of County Officials, the Illinois Association of Circuit Clerks, the Coalition to Reduce Recidivism, and Women United. I look forward to continuing my hard work and providing our community with access to justice. I hope my dedication to public service and improving the office for taxpayers in a fiscally responsible manner has earned your vote. Thank you for your time. Again, I'm Erin Cartwright-Weinstein, your Lake County Circuit Court Clerk. Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for running this forum.
Thank you, Erin. Now, we'd like to welcome our candidates for the coroner position, Jennifer Bannock and Dr. Howard Cooper. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, thank you.
And Dr. Cooper, welcome to you as well.
Thank you very much.
We are going to begin our with opening statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes to speak, and we are going in alphabetical order for opening statements. So Jennifer, you may begin.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for providing this important service for our community. My name is Jennifer Bannock. I am the Democratic candidate for Lake County Coroner. I am a longtime Lake County resident. I grew up in Mundelein, graduated from Mundelein High School. I have a bachelor's in science, in biology specifically, from Illinois State University. I returned to the area to raise my own family. I attended the College of Lake County and became a registered nurse in 2005. I later on decided I wanted to become an advanced practice nurse. I am a certified registered nurse anesthetist or nurse anesthesiologist. Simply put, I put folks to sleep for surgery and take care of them through the surgical experience. I presently reside in Green Oaks with my husband and family. I am also a captain in the United States Reserves. I returned from a mobilization to the Middle East in January of this year. If I have the privilege of being elected to this office, there's 3 things that I'd like to bring to the coroner's office. Number 1, I'd like to improve the data reporting on the coroner's office website with information, statistics, and advocacy resources for Lake County residents. Number 2, I'd like to provide some more fiscal accountability. Earlier this year in April, just after the pandemic, a national crisis came upon us. The incumbent coroner requested an increase to his salary. And number 3, I'd like to provide the Lake County Board with a monthly report outlining and highlighting information about things that are going on in the coroner's office regarding the budget, staffing, and certainly any upticks in mortality in Lake County. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you more this afternoon.
Thank you, Jennifer. Dr. Cooper, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Dr. Howard Cooper, and I am your Lake County Coroner. I'm a lifelong county resident, and I've practiced here for over 29 years. My extensive forensic background goes back over 30 years. I was fortunate to have been trained at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, and I've been working for the federal government since the 90s. On September 11th, 2001, I was activated as part of the Disaster Mortuary Operational Response Team, DMORT. And the following day, my team and I were flown to New York by the Air Force. I worked at Ground Zero in the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, identifying the victims of the World Trade Center terrorist attack. In 2005, as part of the DMORT Weapons of Mass Destruction team, I was deployed to New Orleans. There I spent 5 weeks recovering, decontaminating, and identifying the victims of Hurricane Katrina. Both of these experiences helped form the coroner's mass casualty disaster plan and pandemic plan. Both of these plans have been utilized here in our county. The mass casualty disaster plan was utilized after the explosion in Waukegan, and our pandemic plan has been utilized by many private and government entities since the COVID pandemic started. Our preparation has kept our citizens and first responders safe. 4 years ago, I made many promises to our citizens. I'm extremely proud to say that I fulfilled those promises. Our office was the second office in Illinois to become accredited and one of 26 in the country. Seven of my deputies have been boarded, and the final 2 will become boarded as soon as the COVID delay is lifted. This assures that our investigations are held to the highest standard. I'm also proud of the fact that I've been to more scenes than the last 4 coroners combined. I help families get through the worst time in their lives, and I know how much they appreciate seeing and working with the actual coroner. I've also spent much of my time speaking with young people about opioid, suicide, and making good choices. I have increased our transparency as well by bringing back inquests for all officers involved in in-custody deaths. This allows all the evidence to be given to a jury, and they ultimately determine the cause and manner of death. In addition, we are one of 4 offices in the country with a cadaver dog and the only office in Illinois with a toxicology lab. I'm very proud of our accomplishments in the last 4 years, and I appreciate you all watching here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper. The first question this afternoon for you, too, is what do you think is the most urgent issue for the coroner's office that needs to be addressed? And Dr. Cooper, would you please begin your answer?
Sure. I think there's multiple things that we need to address. First and foremost, we still need to be out in the community. We need to talk to kids about opioid, suicide, and making good choices. Also, I believe that we really do need a new facility. Our current facility, number 1, we've outgrown it. Number 2, the way that the design is right now is just very poor. We don't have a great place for families to be able to see their loved ones. Currently, it's in a hallway behind glass. It's really tough for families to see their loved ones in that capacity, in that area as well. And also, since COVID, we've had a lot of things that we've had to do structurally to try and change our office because of the trailers we've had to bring in and the way that we have to conduct business now. So I think that that's really the most important things that we need to do is make sure we're there for our families, change our facility, update our facility, and still continue our outreach with the community.
Thank you. Ms. Bannock, your 90 seconds begins now.
Thank you so much. So there's 2 things in particular that I find quite concerning. Certainly the COVID pandemic is before us, and that is something that requires constant and consistent planning, adaptable plans. We're evolving through this crisis, and we need to be able to respond appropriately and certainly keep folks in the coroner's office safe in doing so. And then consequently also reporting that data to Lake County residents so that they're able to make decisions to keep their loved ones safe. I will also say that certainly the opioid crisis is first and foremost on my radar. We've seen an 87% increase since January right here in Lake County. There were 73 drug overdoses, 63 of those were narcotic related. The numbers are certainly alarming, and so I see this as an opportunity to collaborate and relationship build with folks in the community, vulnerable populations, students in schools. I think we need to do a lot of relationship building and talking to folks. Unfortunately, the opioid crisis creates the perfect storm for folks that have dependency issues. So I think problem solving that and trying to get back on track with decreasing those numbers.
Thank you.
You know what, moderator, I'm sorry, but there's one statistic that Ms. Bannock just...
I'm sorry, sir. We can't allow for the back and forth. We have a limited amount of time.
The statistic she gave is completely wrong, and
we have a limited amount of time. We'd like to get through several questions, so we just have to go on. And so, question number 2. Do you think Lake County should change from an elected coroner to a hired medical examiner? Why or why not? This answer will begin with Ms. Bannock.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. As most folks know, or many of you maybe know, autopsies are conducted by pathologists. That's something that's outsourced. In terms of being fiscally responsible, I think that having an elected position provides the office, is sufficient. Certainly the coroner is the person then that reviews those final reports, even if the coroner was a medical examiner or a forensic pathologist, they would not be able to do those autopsies themselves. So I think that the way that the system is set up as it is appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Cooper, your response to if you think Lake County should change from an elected coroner to a hired medical examiner.
It should absolutely be a coroner system. If it's a medical examiner system, then it's appointed by the county board. That would actually make the position a lot more political. I believe that if people are doing a good job in their elected position, they can run again and continue that job. If they're doing a poor job, it gives the power to the people. I think if you start taking rights away from the people, I think it's a very bad thing to do. And so I would absolutely keep it as a coroner system. In addition, I would say that I think giving false numbers when you are in a position of power is very irresponsible. I just want to let people know that we have had an overdose increase this year, but our overdose increase is actually up 13%. Now, 13% is where we're at currently as of this day, but unfortunately, we still have 19 cases pending in our overdose category. So it could be as much as 39% as far as an increase if all those cases then are determined that they are overdoses. Right now, they're pending, so we don't know where we're at. But currently, the data says that we are up 13% over last year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. How does working with the Illinois Violent Death Reporting System help Lake County residents? And Dr. Cooper, we'll begin with you for that answer.
IVDRS and Suitors is really a just great organization because they come in, they look at all our data. I've had the privilege of putting together 2 of our contracts with that department, and they really, it helps us on a number of fronts. Number one, they look at all the data where we can then see where we rank within the state. So we can look at everybody's data that they're working with. In addition to, it gives us grant money at the end, depending on how many cases we have, we can utilize that money to be able to really fight the opioid epidemic. It's something that is very important to me. I'm on the board of LCOI, and certainly they look at our statistics as well. I also talk to a lot of families. I talk to not only families where people have overdosed, but also kids in schools. We run tours. We do a lot of public outreach. That information is really important. And I think that the more information we can get out, the better off we are. I'm the first coroner to have an annual report since 2004, and those are on the website. We have numbers from 2017. We have a full report from 2018 and 2019. So numbers are important. It's also important to look at year-end data so we can compare one year to the next. If we start doing things mid-year or mid-term, the problem is that it's irresponsible because our numbers, because of pending cases, don't really reflect what's going on.
Thank you. Ms. Bannock, how do you feel about the Illinois Violent Death Reporting System helping Lake County residents?
Yeah, well, it's great. This is something myself and Howard agree on. So yes, I think that it's a great opportunity for tracking for Lake County residents in terms of being accountable for those deaths and being able to do retrospective review on what's happening here in Lake County, and then certainly an opportunity to get additional resources here for Lake County.
Thank you. Next question. How does your education, background, and experience prepare you for this position? And we're back to Ms. Bannock for a response.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So as I mentioned, I'm a certified registered nurse anesthetist or nurse anesthesiologist. As a nurse anesthesiologist, I have very comprehensive education and background in pharmacology and anatomy and physiology. Certainly that background will be helpful for me in being, if I'm elected to the coroner position. I will also say that as a nurse anesthesiologist, I take care of patients when they will often postpartum report is the most vulnerable time in their life. I speak to them beforehand, I review their health history, I bring them back into the operating room, and I make sure that they're safe and comfortable. And, at that point, I am the voice for the patient. I see that as my role as the coroner, taking care and advocating for Lake County residents and being their voice. I also feel that my background, my military background, will be a valuable asset. I have worked with people around the country and truly around the world. I have a long-standing history of service to my community and service to my country.
Thank you. Dr. Cooper.
Well, first, I do believe that my background plays a big role. I mean, obviously, I'm a doctor. I have been in this position for 4 years, so I'm certainly well aware of what it takes to be a coroner. I've also worked for coroners and medical examiners across the country over the last 30 years, doing identifications. And in addition to that, I've been deployed twice with DMORT teams and have been activated and gone to really horrific conditions like Ground Zero and Hurricane Katrina. Also, I believe my background of being a hazmat operations level person or first responder, and as well as technician level, also makes me well aware of what we need to do if we end up in either a mass disaster situation like we did in Waukegan. Certainly my familiarity with working down at Ground Zero was a big help when we put together that operation for recovery. In addition to that, I believe that just really being able to work with, not only with patients, but being able to work with people at really the worst time in their lives and be compassionate and empathetic and be able to get them through that time is really, really helpful. We all know that most people don't want to ever go to the dentist, and I certainly am familiar with that. So, I do think that my background plays a big role.
Thank you very much. Well, we have come to the point already to get to your closing statements. And a reminder that you do have 90 seconds for a closing statement. And Dr. Cooper, you get to begin.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate today, and thanks to all our viewers for taking the time to watch and educating yourselves on the office and the candidates. Voting is a right that no one should take for granted and everyone should exercise. I'm extremely proud of what we have accomplished at the coroner's office in the last 4 years. We have changed the way people see our office. We help families at the worst time in their lives. We educate kids at their schools, fairs, and when they come in for tours. All of our investigations are run to the highest standard, and becoming accredited is an incredible accomplishment and assures we are providing the best services for you, our residents. Fortunately, many of you watching here today will never have to deal with our office, but for those of you who do, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who aren't familiar with our office, I ask you to talk with your friends who are police officers, firefighters, ER and ICU nurses and doctors, and funeral directors. They will tell you all about the job we do every single day. I work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and those people can attest to that. My wife will be the first to tell you how many nights I'm called out and how many hours she spends in the car waiting for me outside of a scene. This job takes compassion and commitment, and it is so much more important than people realize. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the Daily Herald, the Lake County Farm Bureau, FOP Lodges 5 and 66, AFSCME Council 31, the Northeastern Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO, the United Hellenic Voters of America, and the Lake and McHenry County Scanner. It's an honor for me to be your coroner, and I hope to continue. Please vote for me on November 3rd or before. And I'd like to finish with a quote from William Gladstone. Show me the manner in which a nation or community cares for its dead, and I will measure with mathematical exactness the tender sympathies of its people, their respect for the laws of the land, and their loyalty to high ideals. Thank you.
Dr. Cooper. Ms. Bannock, would you offer your closing statement, please?
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Bannock. I am the Democratic candidate for Lake County Coroner. Thanks for tuning in today to learn more about me and my campaign. As I mentioned, I'm a certified registered nurse anesthetist or nurse anesthesiologist, which is different from being a doctor of dental surgery or dentist. I'm a longtime resident of Lake County. I have a long-standing history of volunteerism within my community and in community service to my country. You can find out more about me and my campaign at bannockforcorner.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at bannockforcorner. Thanks for tuning in today, and make sure you return your ballots either by USPS at the Dropbox locations right here in Lake County, or on voting day in person on November 3rd. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you candidates. And we will take a short little break and get to our next forum shortly. Welcome to our two candidates for the state's attorney position for Lake County. Since everyone was here for the overview or review of the rules, will not have to go through that right now. And so I welcome the two of you, Mike Nerheim and Eric Reinhardt. And because we're doing alphabetical order, I'll ask for opening statements from Mr. Nerheim to begin.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on. I thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. I'm Mike Nerheim. I am your Lake County State's Attorney. Look, I was born and raised here in Lake County. I was born in Waukegan. I live in Gurnee with my wife and 3 kids, where we are raising our family. I've been invested in a part of this community, as I said, my whole life. I ran for this office because I wanted to help people. That's why I got into law in the first place. I've been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. And I think that experience uniquely positions me to do this very important job. My philosophy in running the state's attorney's office here in Lake County for the past 8 years has been pretty simple. It's been to try to balance being aggressive with combating violent crime and those that would seek to harm our community with being compassionate for those that need a second chance. And that's what we've done. You see, I've got a record over 8 years of doing what I said I was going to do. Our office has a national reputation for taking on many issues, whether it's what we've done to take on violent crimes like sexual assault, crimes against children, domestic violence, gang crimes, gun crimes, whether it's the work we've done in diversion programs, the work we've done to identify and address wrongful convictions, the work we've done to take on the opioid epidemic, and most recently issues like teen vaping. These are real issues, and these are issues that I have an actual record of taking on here in Lake County. When I ran for this office 8 years ago, and 4 years ago again, I made several promises to the community. And I'm proud to sit here today having accomplished everything I said I was going to do and then some. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm proud of the work that I've done. I'm proud of my staff, but there's more work to do. And I hope I can earn the support of our voters here in Lake County for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Reinhardt, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this debate, this forum. My name is Eric Reinhardt. I am the Democratic nominee for Lake County State's Attorney. I'm running to make Lake County safer and fair. Before I talk about a few of my priorities and the changes that I know we need in this office, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Highwood with my 2 sons and my wonderful wife, Stephanie. I've been an attorney in Lake County for 17 years, fighting for my clients in the courthouse almost every day. I wish I could say that all of my cases have been in Lake County, but I do have a few in McHenry and Cook. But 95% of my cases have been right here in Lake County. The reason I'm running is because we must do better in the state's attorney's office. We must focus on results. Currently, violent crime, murders, and sexual assaults have gone up over the last 8 years. We need to change that. We need to do that by focusing on violent crimes, by letting our prosecutors work harder on those cases instead of smaller cases. We need to make sure that we are also getting people help that need help. We need to expand our treatment programs. And I look forward to talking to my opponent today about some of the numbers, because the numbers show that he hasn't followed all of his promises. He just said that he's accomplished every one of his promises. That's not true. He and I disagree about that. Third, we have to fight racial profiling. The statistics show that racial profiling is on the rise in Lake County and has been, and my opponent has never called that out. It's one of the biggest reasons that I'm running. Fourth, when he says that he has fixed the wrongful conviction culture, I deeply disagree with him. He's wrong about that. I've been in this courthouse every day for the last 17 years, and it's still here. And some of the same people that were involved in those cases are too. Those are the reasons I'm running. When I'm elected state's attorney, we will be safer and fair because we will also be transparent about whether these results are happening. I look forward to the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you. Now we'll begin a series of questions. First one is, what are your priorities for the Office of State's Attorney? And Mr. Reinhardt, will begin with you.
Thank you. I listed them in my opening statement, but I'm happy to expand. I talked about violent crime. We need to focus on that by getting prosecutors out of the courtroom and into the field more. I've sat in these courtrooms every day, and I see just prosecutors reporting status to judges. We need to have them out meeting with victims, survivors of cases. We need to focus on the causes of violent crime. We need to be out in the communities working with ministers, community leaders to address the causes. We need to try to get our hands around the epidemic of domestic violence. We need to have more experienced prosecutors working on domestic violence cases. We need to go and meet with the survivors of domestic violence cases where they are, whether it's in school or at their job. We got to get out into the community more. That's how we're going to focus on violent crimes. A second priority is racial profiling, which I mentioned. We have to have statistics about both violent crime and racial profiling. I deeply disagree with Mike's office never having any statistics about this up on any type of dashboard. Many other states, many other counties throughout the country do that. Our own sheriff, John Eidelberg, does that. And it can be done here with a program as easy as an Excel spreadsheet. It would let us monitor crime trends. We should know how much domestic violence has been up during the quarantine. We should know how much DUIs have been up during the quarantine. Current crime data is about 18 months old if we rely on the feds. It should be a local solution so that we can identify programs and increase enforcement efforts.
Thank you. Mr. Nurheim.
Thank you. You know, I could get into the details with my opponent on the statistics that he's representing, but I encourage people to look at there's reports that Loyola University, for example, just did with regard to crime data in Lake County, and it will show you that crime's actually down over the period of the time that I've been state's attorney. Now, there is violent crime in our community, and I don't doubt that. And there are areas where we really need to do better at addressing that. And I'll tell you some of the things that I've done with regard to addressing violent crime. When I came into the office, the felony unit was basically one unit of prosecutors handling a wide variety of cases. I created specialized prosecution units in our office, a specialized victims unit to take on sex crimes and crimes against children, a domestic violence unit to focus on domestic violence, a cyber unit to focus on cyber crimes. I created a gang and narcotics unit to go after street gangs and the scourge that they bring to our community. We've also recently been included in the Chicago HIDA, which is the high intensive drug trafficking area, where we work with our local and federal partners to bring more resources here to Lake County to address our gang and gun violence situation. So violent crime is obviously something that we're going to continue to focus on. The second issue that's important is diversion. And we're going to work to continue to focus on diverting not just people with substance abuse, but also mental illness from our system. And we're going to do that by creating a triage or a crisis center here in Lake County that will help those people avoid any penetration into the criminal justice system.
Thank you. The next question may be a little partly repetitive, but because of the answers you've recently given, but let's explore a little more. What improvements do you support to improve relations between the state's attorney office and the residents of color? And how can your office work with the sheriff's office as well as local police departments to make improvements? Mr. Nurhan.
So that's a very important issue and a very timely one. And it's an issue that's been important to me all along, not just recently because of recent events around the country. And again, I think the root of this is being invested and active in your community. Again, I grew up in Waukegan. I've been a part of this community my whole life. I didn't just get active in working with the community because I wanted to run for state's attorney. I was active in our community long before I ever decided to run for this office. But that's important because if you're going to work with groups across our diverse county, those people have to know you and they have to trust you. And as a prosecutor, as the state's attorney, you are the chief law enforcement official for the county. And in that position, you're uniquely situated to build that bridge. And programs like DOA Out, for example, that I helped create right here in Lake County, that's a revolutionary program that helps get people struggling with substance abuse access to treatment through the police without arrest, regardless of where they're from or regardless of their resources. That's just one actual program that I created to help build that bridge, because now you have police officers across our community that instead of driving people to jail are driving them to treatment. And those are programs that are important, and those are programs that we have to continue. I've worked very well with our sheriff and with our chiefs of police around Lake County, as well as the community groups. And it's about bringing those groups together that we have to continue to do. And that's what I've done, again, not just in recent time, but ever since I've been state's attorney here in Lake County.
Thank you. So Mr. Reinhardt, just to review, this is a two-part question. What improvements do you support to improve relations between the state's attorney's office and residents of color? And secondly, how can your office work with the sheriff's office as well as local police departments to make improvements?
Thank you. After the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I met with many community leaders. I marched, I engaged in vigils. Black Lives Matter. I'm willing to say that. I've never heard my opponents say that Black Lives Matter. When we talk about Black Lives Mattering, we don't only mean with respect to law enforcement, but also in our courtrooms. Too often, victims of color have been neglected by this office. Too often, victims of color have not been advocated for at the same level as other residents. That's going to change when I'm state's attorney. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, we don't only mean with respect to policing issues, but also in our courtrooms. We have to have transparency. My opponent just talked about the STOP program. Wouldn't you like to see the racial breakdown of the people who have been in the STOP program? If there's a racial disparity, then we need to look at implicit bias training, both for officers and for the prosecutors who are involved. Maybe there isn't a racial disparity on the STOP program. I don't know, because Mr. Nierheim doesn't have any statistics up about any of his programs whatsoever. We must be transparent. We have to have a community panel that meets with the state's attorney and is open about what it finds. The community panel is not a transparent process. That's one of my opponent's broken promises. I don't know who's on the community panel. I don't know when they meet. I don't know what they do, because none of it's transparent. And so we have to have an open dialogue that is actually transparent, and we have to publish statistics on racial profiling. There have been report after report that has identified it happening in Lake County, and people shouldn't have to do research to go find it. Regarding the Loyola report, the statistics that Mike just quoted are very old.
Thank you. Next question. What are your highest priorities in protecting victims and the accused in an effort to seek justice? Mr. Reinhardt.
Thank you. My motto has been that we need to make Lake County safer and fairer. These two ideas are not in conflict. We have to advocate for victims. That's why I've been supported by victims groups who've written letters about my goals. My plan to be the voice of the victim and to increase the role of the victims is right on my website, reinhardtforlakecounty.com. My plans are all on my website. We need to have a victims advisory panel, which we've never had. We need to make sure that we are advocating effectively against elder abuse and nursing home abuse, and also the financial exploitation of the elderly. We have to get our hands around this domestic violence epidemic in Lake County, which has never happened. With respect to defendants, we have to have an open file system. We have to be transparent and make sure that the prosecutors and police who have made mistakes in the past are no longer working in our courthouse. My opponent has kept as his chief deputy an attorney who was personally responsible for prosecuting 3 innocent men. People aren't going to trust this office if the chief deputy of the Lake County State's Attorney's Office personally prosecuted Jerry Hobbs and elected for the death penalty, personally prosecuted Juan Rivera, which the appellate courts finally had to shut down, and was also involved in the Edwards case. And so people aren't going to trust this office until there's new personnel with respect to that. And we're going to see new training, we're going to see new handbooks to make sure we end the epidemic of wrongful convictions in Lake County.
Thank you. Mr. Nurheim, what are your highest priorities in protecting victims and the accused in the effort to seek justice?
Sure. So this is an area that probably maybe most distinguishes my opponent and myself, because I've done both my whole career, and this cuts to the heart of what it means to be a prosecutor. When you're a prosecutor, your job is to represent the community, but also offenders and victims. We're there to make sure everybody's treated fairly. And again, unlike my opponent, I have a record of doing that. I've spent the better part of my career, again, over 20 years as a lawyer, representing people charged with crimes, but also working with victims as a prosecutor. My opponent's never done that. I've spoken with victims. I've spoken with their families. I know what they go through. I've felt their pain as they come into the courthouse. We have child victims that come in here terrified. That's why I brought in the services of 2 comfort dogs as part of our staff in Lake County. I helped work to rewrite victims' rights legislation here in Illinois. Recently, the American Bar Association started a commission on victims' rights. I'm the appointed representative of all the prosecutors in the country on that commission. So my reputation with respect to victims' rights and protecting victims is well established, and I encourage anybody to look into that. Representing the rights of offenders is also incredibly important, and that's what we do as prosecutors. When we screen cases every day, we're looking to make sure that the police, number one, caught the right person, but more importantly, that we have evidence to prove that person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And if they don't, we don't bring charges.
Thank you. Lake County had a reputation for wrongful convictions. I think that was mentioned a little earlier. Do you feel that's still true? And if so, what can be done? Mr. Nurheim?
So when I ran for office initially in 2012, this was a huge issue. And it's interesting that the cases that my opponent referenced happened prior to that. These are cases, the Juan Rivera case, for example, happened when I was in high school. But my opponent keeps bringing up those cases. There's been 63,000 felony prosecutions brought since I've been state's attorney, and I don't hear him talking about those cases. Now, when I took office, the Lake County State's Attorney's Office did have a reputation with regard to wrongful prosecutions in some of those cases. Since then, because of what I've done, and again, what I've done, not just what I've said, the Lake County State's Attorney's Office has a reputation as being the model for how you address that. I've been asked to travel across the country to give presentations on how we address wrongful convictions here in Lake County. Even Barry Scheck has referenced Lake County in terms of our work that we've done with regard to wrongful convictions. I've done that by creating the first of its kind case review panel, which brings in experts, people from outside of my office, people from different backgrounds, civil rights lawyers, retired judges, civil attorneys, people with really no ties to my office, to review those cases and to identify the root causes of them. And I've done that. I've actually freed people. There's 4 cases that I've dismissed since I've been in office. So again, this is something where I have a record of actually taking this on and doing it, and not just talking about it.
Thank you, sir. Your response, Mr. Reinhardt. Does Lake County have a reputation for wrongful convictions? Is that still true? And if so, what should be done?
Yes. The reason for that is because the chief deputy of the current office was involved in those cases and is in charge of the office when Mike is at meetings in Washington and Springfield. Nothing wrong with Mike being at meetings. That's not my point. My point is that when Mike is at meetings, Jeff Pavletic is in charge, and he was involved in Rivera, Hobbs, and the Edwards case. That's why I keep bringing it up, Mike, is because he's your number 2, and he's training people when you're not in, well, he's training people all the time, but he's training people when you're not in the office. In January of 2012, right before the Republican primary, after the Juan Rivera case was handed down, you talk about being in high school, Mike, but in fact, you praised Mike Waller. You praised Mike Waller. There's a video of you praising Mike Waller right after the Juan Rivera case was handed down. So the reason this keeps coming up is because you've praised, protected, and promoted the attorneys who were involved in those cases. I don't think the voters of Lake County care about whether other prosecutors throughout the country have invited you to conferences. I think they want to see results in Lake County, and they want to know that the people who are training their young prosecutors with respect to ethics, with respect to the preservation of evidence, with respect to Brady lists, isn't somebody who was personally involved in those cases. Not only did innocent men lose 109 years of their lives, destroying their lives and their families, taxpayers paid over $54 million because of those cases. Yet the same detectives who coerced confessions in those cases are still in our courthouse, and they're not on your Brady list, and the chief deputy of your office was involved in 3 of those. That's why people still have this question.
For your next question, what policy changes, community involvement, staffing considerations have been made, or where is there room for improvement, particularly with people of color and women? Mr. Nuran?
So this is an issue that's been very important to me. When I took over this office in 2012, the men and women that make up the state's attorney's office did not reflect the community that we serve. Lake County is an incredibly diverse community. I've worked hard for the past 8 years to improve the diversity of the men and women that make up the state's attorney's office. Most of my hires, and again, most of the people that work on the office today are people that have been hired by me. The majority of people in my office, over 2/3 of them are women. 2 of the top 3 positions in my office are held by women. If you look at the demographics of people that I've hired, I think it's 59% of the assistant state's attorneys that I've hired since I've been in office are people of color or women. So again, this is something that I've not just talked about, but I've actually taken on. And we've done that by recruiting and by increasing our internship program and recruiting people here in Lake County to come and work in the state's attorney's office. We actually go even upstream of law school. We have a program called Knowledge is Power, where we bring in middle school students from right here in Waukegan and North Chicago and Zion. And we let them take a tour of our office and get experience in terms of who we are and what we do. And it's our hope that in doing that, those young people will grow up and want to be assistant state's attorneys, public defenders, or judges. We need to do more, and we've been doing this, but we need to do more to encourage people of color in our community to seek positions, whether it's in the state's attorney's office or the public defender's office or our judiciary.
Thank you. Mr. Reinhardt, your response?
Yeah, so I disagree with Mike on this. The nine of his 12 criminal supervisors are men. There's never been a woman supervisor in the 8 years he's been here. There's never been a woman supervisor of the domestic violence unit or of the special victims unit. Whether he has hired lawyers of color or not in terms of his statistics, I don't know. But right now there is, I believe, 2 African-American lawyers out of an office of 61, and I believe there are 2 Latina lawyers out of an office of 61. Those numbers are abhorrent. Whether Mike's trying really hard or not, I don't know. But I mentioned earlier that this is about results. And if he's hired more lawyers of color and they've come into the office and they don't like what they see, or they don't sense that this office has a commitment to ending racial profiling, they haven't stayed. Because you may have noticed that the statistics he just cited were all people he hired, but he didn't cite his current statistics, did he? We all know his current statistics. He has 2 Latinos and 2 African Americans. That's not enough. That doesn't reflect the diversity of our office. And frankly, women are not the primary decision makers in the criminal division, which is 75% of the work there. It is primarily white men. There are no supervisors of color that I'm aware of within the attorney ranks. And so when people come to the office and they see that when they're in the courtrooms, then that's not connecting with the community. We also need to make sure that we have enough Spanish-speaking lawyers and domestic violence advocates.
Thank you. What criminal justice reforms do you support? Specifically, maybe considering in the areas of juvenile justice in Lake County. And Mr. Reinhardt, you can begin.
Thank you. I would note that several criminal justice organizations have endorsed me in this race because of my commitment to criminal justice reform. I encourage everybody who's watching this to investigate Restore Justice Illinois, which has my answers on this, which will be longer than the 90 seconds, as well as the Center for Racial and Gender Equity. And my answers are all available there. And that's really important that we talk about this. I'm running on the platform of criminal justice reform through transparency, through statistics, through being open about what racial profiling situation is. At one point in our juvenile justice holding facility, every single minor in the facility was a minor of color. There were no minors being held who were white. I believe those are available through federal reports, not the specific names, of course, but the racial breakdown. By the way, those should be on the state's attorney's website too. We have to end the disparate results that we see with respect to race in our juvenile justice system. I've been endorsed by the Lake County Federation of Teachers because of my commitment to ending the school to prison pipeline. And we have to work with our schools. I've been in the high schools here in Waukegan talking to the students about how the state's attorney's office needs to be more involved, that we don't simply see the police in schools as the enemy, but make sure that we're putting real community resources into our schools, both for educational purposes and to end that pipeline. That's why I've received so many endorsements from so many reform groups. And obviously we have to, sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nurheim.
Sure. So again, this is another area where I actually have a record and I don't just have talking points. So I created a diversion program called the Alternative Prosecution Program, which is a way for felony offenders to avoid the stigma of a conviction. They're able to take accountability, but then not have that conviction so they can get on with their life and better themselves. We have diversion programs like drug court, veterans court, mental health court. We have our STOP program. We also have been working very hard to address issues before they ever come to the courthouse. When you look at the vast majority of people that access the criminal justice system, they're people with either a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue or a combination of both. And as I said, we have great programs that are designed to help capture those people once they've come into the system, get them the help they need, and then get them back on their feet. But in an ideal world, we would prevent those people from coming into the system in the first place. And that's what I've been working to do. Again, not talking about it, but actually doing it. I created the A Way Out program, as I've talked about, which helps people struggling with addiction get help through the police without an arrest. We're approaching 800 people in our community that have gotten long-term treatment because of that program. I introduced naloxone to the police so they could reverse overdoses. We're working to prevent people from mental health from coming into the system by creating a diversion center so those people can not come into the system but get access to care. These are things that we're doing. With regard to, well, my time is up before I got to police reform, but there's more information about that on my website as well.
Thank you. This has just been a very stimulating conversation, and I'm so sorry we have to be wrapping it up. So we're now going to go into our closing statements. And let's see, Mr. Reinhardt, you were second in the opening statement, so you'll begin with the closing statements first.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to Mike for the conversation today. I want to talk very briefly here about two things. One, Mike keeps saying that he has a record, but if we don't have any statistics or any transparency, we don't know that. The diversion program that he just talked about has a part-time attorney that's doing it, and nobody knows how many cases are in the diversion program. This all has to be transparent so that when people who are running for office say things like, I fulfilled my promises, we can just go somewhere and look. When I'm state's attorney, we're gonna have all these statistics up so that you can see whether I followed my promises. We don't have a strong local media system, at least not compared to CNN and Fox. So there's nobody fact checking when Mike says, check my record, and we certainly can't go to his website. I once went to court as an advocate for, and by the way, this woman was a victim of domestic violence. I've worked with victims since I was in the clinic at the University of Chicago. My very first case was a murder where an abused boy killed his abuser. So I've been working with victims since day one, Mike. I went to a case once 22 times with a woman who had mental health problems and substance abuse problems. She got rejected from Mike's mental health court because she wouldn't say the magic words that she was guilty of an offense. She wanted help. She came to seek help, and she couldn't get into the mental health court program. We don't know the numbers of any of those programs. I had to go to court for her 22 times in a felony courtroom because her coat hit the lip of a Libertyville police officer. That was wasted resources, that was wasted time, and that was an injustice. And an injustice anywhere There is no such thing as a small injustice. And that one case illustrates the changes we need in Lake County.
Thank you. Mr. Nurheim, your closing statement?
Thank you. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to have this forum. I hope people will continue to be informed before they vote. We do have a strong media presence here in Lake County. I would not rely on Fox News. I don't watch Fox News. I read the Daily Herald. The Daily Herald has a reporter embedded in our courthouse, somebody that goes to court, watches court every day. They know what's going on in our system, and they've endorsed me. So what I would just hope folks would focus on is two things: experience and record. See, I've got the experience to do this job. My opponent wants to run the third biggest prosecution office in Illinois, and he's never prosecuted so much as a traffic ticket. I've been a prosecutor. I've been a defense attorney. I know what it takes to run an office of 140 people. I know what it takes to run a $15 million budget, because I've done it successfully here in Lake County. And again, a record. I have a record of making promises and fulfilling those promises. And all that information is out there. I encourage people to look at my record. Look at my record and look at my opponent's lack of a record. Again, I don't just have talking points. I have actual accomplishments. So there's great things that have been done here in Lake County, but there's more to be done. I hope I can earn your continued support so I can continue to do that work for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure to be moderating such a good, civilized give and take. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.